Okay, I'm just gonna wait a little bit more. All right, guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So this week we're covering something that we've already covered in class before, but we're moving on from the whole like adding fractions, subtracting fractions, multiplying fractions, and dividing and mixed numbers and all that. Now we're going to be covering a topic that's only about percents. So I know that we've covered it several times in class. So this should be pretty easy. But either way, it's something that's really important. And I remember a lot of people struggling with this. So that's why I still want to recover it and make sure that you guys all know it really well. So on like to start off with, I want to just remind you guys of those little tricks that I showed you in class where, like, if you have something like 1 over 10, when you have a fraction like that, um, basically, when there's a 10 on the bottom, you can think of it as dimes. So this, you can think of it as dimes. And then when you have something like, let's say 1 over 4, then you can think about that like as in a quarter. And then when you have something like 1 over 100, whenever you have 100, you can think about it as pennies. Like that. This kind of helps because then you know exactly how much of a percent it is. Because if you have 1 dime, how many cents is that? That would be 10 cents, right? So if you have 10 cents, then it is the same thing as saying 10%. So it's simple. If you convert, well, let me do this first and then I'll talk about decimals. So that would be 10%. If you have 1 over 4, then you think about quarters. If you had 1 quarter, then you have 25 cents. So 25%. And then if you have 1 penny, because it's 1 over 100 over here, if you have 1 penny, then you have 1 cent or 1%. So that's kind of like an easy way, a shortcut, because now if I tell you instead of 1 over 4, it's 2 over 4, then you already know, okay, well, it's 2 quarters. 2 quarters is 50 cents. So that is 50%. So pretty easy. If you have something like over here on this side, let's say that I have 9 over 10. So if you have 9 dimes, then how many cents is that? 90 cents. So it's 90%. So pretty easy. Now converting this to a decimal is pretty easy. All you do if you're converting a percent to a decimal, you start the dot here and then you move over to the left twice. And then you put the decimal right there. So this one would be 90% or 0.90. And then this one, same thing. You start the decimal here, move to the left twice, leave the decimal there. This one's going to be 0.50. And then this one over here, same thing. You start here, but you move over to the left twice again, put the decimal. Now in this empty space right here, we're just going to put a 0 there. So this one would be 0.01. So pretty easy. let me kind of show you. So these are just shortcuts. Now, if you had something like, let's say I had something like 2 over 5, right? So if I have something like 2 over 5, it's not a shortcut for me. This is kind of like a weird fraction. But I can make it into a dime, right? Like I can make it into one of my shortcuts because I could multiply this, the top and bottom, I could multiply it by 2. And then the bottom one would give me a 10. So 5 times 2 would be a 10. 2 times 2 would be 4. So I can make it into my shortcut. So sometimes you can do that. And that's the beauty of learning these shortcuts, is sometimes you can take a little shortcut and save yourself a lot of math. So in this case, if it's 4 over 10, then that's 40%. Because if you have 4 dimes, then that's 40 cents or 40%. So that's kind of like the benefit of having this. Same thing if I had this over here, but if I had, let's say I have 5 over 50. Well, that's not a shortcut for me, but I know that I can make this into a shortcut because I could try to make the bottom number 100, so that way I can make the shortcut of pennies. So if I multiply these top and bottom times 2, then the bottom number would turn into 100. And then the top number, 5 times 2, is 10. So then the top one would turn into a 10. So now this is a shortcut for me. So if you have 10 pennies, then that's 10 cents. So it's 10%. Right? So that's kind of why I teach you guys these shortcuts, is because sometimes they give you a shortcut like this already. They say 2 over 4, and you already know, okay, well, when 4 is on the bottom, you can think about quarters, and then you can say, well, if I have 2 quarters, then it's 50%. So it's pretty easy like that. So those are like the shortcuts. Now let me show you, let's see. Let's go to assignment number 21. So let me show you guys what I'm talking about for assignment 21. Let me see if I can figure this out right here. There we go. So this is assignment number 21. This is what I'm going to upload to Google Classroom. I'm also going to be doing a quizzes for this. So the quizzes, because there's like some pictures in there and everything, I'll probably upload the quizzes like in about, it'll probably take me about an hour more or less. But I'll upload these documents first for the students that prefer to have paper. But if you prefer the quizzes, just wait about an hour, and I'll probably, that should be enough time to upload assignment 21 and assignment 22. But for this first one right here, you're going to have the first 3 questions, which is 50, 35, and 10. So 50, these are 100 little squares right here. So 50 would be basically half of this whole thing. So you would have to draw or shade in 5 of these whole lines right here. And then the percent of this would be obviously 50%. And then parts over whole. So we've done that a lot in class, right? So the whole thing is 100 squares. So 100 would go on the bottom right here. And then on the top part would be 50. So 50 right there would be on the top. So 50 over 100. Same thing with this one. This one would be 35 over 100 and so on. So that'll be that. For the second page, 70%. So a percent can also be written as a decimal. So when you write them as a decimal, then you would have to write this as a decimal, which the same thing as I was showing you a little while ago. You start the decimal over here, move over twice, and then so this one would be 0.70, and then so on. So then you would answer all of these questions right over here. On these second parts, like this one and this one, on the first one, they just shade the squares on the top. But then the second one, they don't shade anything, but they tell you it's 85%. So you would have to shade in 85% here. So I know 85% would be 8 of these lines. You shade in 8 of them and then 5 extra ones. And then you would have to figure out part over whole and the decimal. So let's do something like that. So let's say that, okay. So let's say that we have something like, give me 1 second. Okay. So let's say that we had something like 70%, or no, let's do like a different number. Let's do like 72%. So if I have something like 72%, the decimal for this is pretty simple. So you would start the decimal right here. You would move it over twice. And the decimal would be right here. So that would be 0.72, right? Now, if we did something like a fraction for this, well, 72% out of how many whole? Well, 72%, anytime that you're talking about percent, the whole is always going to be 100 because you can't have more than 100% of anything. So 100% is all of it. That's everything. So this would be 72 over 100. That would be the fraction for this. So 72 over 100. Now you can simplify this, but for right now, these next assignments, I'm not going to have you simplify this. I'm mainly focusing on whether you know how to do decimals from fractions, how to fill in the fractions, things like that. So that's mainly what I'm going to focus on. Same thing if you're going to have something like, let's say something like 7%. Just 7. So the decimal for 7% would be the same thing. You start off here, but it would go over once, twice. And then in this empty space right here, it's like the same thing as if you said that there's a 0 there. So the percent or the decimal would be 0.07. Now the fraction for this 7% would be 7 out of 100. So remember, this one, the top one is part over whole. We've done this in class several times. So part over whole. So it'll always be like that. Now let's see what, let me see. Let me share you. Let's do assignment number 22. Let's look at that one. So that's assignment 21. Assignment 22 would be this one right here. So assignment 22, it's first going to start off with practice making two equivalent fractions for each of the fractions below. So two equivalent fractions. So what that means is if you simplified this, that would be an equivalent fraction. If you multiply times 2 on any of these, it would also be an equivalent fraction. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's go back to the whiteboard here. So let's go to that. So if we went back to the whiteboard here, let me show you what that's going to look like. So let's say that I have something like 2 over 10. And then I tell you to give me two equivalent fractions. Give me two equivalent fractions of this right here. So one equivalent fraction would be if you simplified it. So simplifying it is dividing it by, like in this case, we can divide both by 2 because both the top and the bottom numbers are even. So if we divide by 2, it would be 1 over 5. Right? So 1 over 5 is the same fraction as 2 over 10. So they're equivalent. That's what equivalent means, is that they're equal. They're the same. So this 1 over 5 is the same thing as this 2 over 10. Now to make another equivalent fraction, I can also multiply by 2. So I can make this bigger by multiplying by 2. So if we made it bigger and we multiply both the top and the bottom by 2, the top one would be 4 and the bottom one would be 20. That is also an equivalent fraction. Why is it an equivalent fraction? Because if you simplified this by 2, it would turn into 2 over 10 because we would divide both top and bottom by 2. It would turn into 2 over 10. Divide that again by 2, it'd be 1 over 5. Same exact thing, no matter which way you look at it. And the reason being is, let me show you. So this is 20%. This is also the same thing as saying 20%. And this is also the same thing as saying 20%. So that's going to be that next part. So now let me show you another part of assignment 22. So for assignment 22, okay. So let's say, and we've done this in class several times also, but let's say that I give you a kind of a weird number and I say, well, what is 3 over 7 in percent? So I say, what's the percent of that and what's the decimal of that? So the only way to do something like this right here is if you actually divide it out. And so cowboy rides the horse. So the cowboy is going to be inside. The horse is going to be outside. So does 7 go into 3? No, it doesn't. So we add a 0. Whenever you add a 0 like that, you make sure that you put a decimal up here. 7 goes into 30 4 times. That would be 28. You subtract that. And so 30 minus 28 is going to be 2. Then we add another 0 right here. 7 goes into 20 2 times. So 2 times 7 is going to be 14. Subtract that. That'll give us a 6. We have to add another 0, and so on and so on and so on. But let's say that we ended it there. Like that was it. So if we did end here and we finally got a 0 down here at the bottom and we were done, then 0.42, that's already the decimal. So let's say that this is 0.42. So 0.42. And then let's say that now I say, okay, well, give me a percent from this. So to do a percent, it's the opposite of doing a decimal. So now you're going to move over to the right 2 times. So we move over to the right, and then that's going to be 42%. And that's it, you're done. So that's going to be some of the questions that you're going to be having on these next 2 assignments. Assignment 23 is going to be pretty similar also. It's going to have some of these same things. But I am going to move up Friday's Zoom session to tomorrow. So tomorrow we will have a Zoom session at 4 p.m. And then I will cover all of this again. And then hopefully by the time that we get to the end of these next 3 weeks, you're going to have the percents down really easily and you're going to know it by memory. We're going to get a little bit more in depth, a little bit more difficult questions, things like that. We're going to kind of dive in a little bit more. But I want to make sure that you guys have a really good understanding of this because you do percents a lot in 7th grade. So you're going to be dealing with this a lot next year, and this will help out a lot next year. And not to mention, I mean, we're also doing these assignments too that are also being counted for grades as well. So, so that's going to be some of those things. Let me see if there's any other questions I need to go over. Okay, so let's do something. Let's do one more of these examples. So let's do this one, 3 over 8. So this is a question that's going to be on assignment 22. So 3 over 8. 3 goes inside here, 8 goes out here. So does 8 go into 3? No, it doesn't. So we add a 0. When we add a 0, we put a decimal up here. And then now you have to figure out, okay, well, how many times does 8 go into 30? So it'll be 3. So 3 times 8 is going to be 24. Subtract that. So 30 minus 24 is 6. We add a 0 in there. So how many times does 8 go into 60? It'll be 7, which is 56. Subtract that. It's going to be a 4. And we add a 0. And then 8 times 5 is going to be 40. So we subtract that out, and that's it. You're done. So now in this case, we know that 3 over 8, the decimal is going to be 0.375. But then if I ask for the percent, then what you have to do is you have to move this decimal to the right 2 times and then put the decimal there. So the percent is going to be 37.5%. So 37.5%, that'll be the answer for that one. So these are definitely some things that we're going to be covering a lot over the next 3 weeks. So you need to make sure that you understand it very well. If you need to, you can message me through Google Classroom and I can answer any questions on it. But this is something that you definitely need to learn. So let me take roll right here because I need to be making sure I have everybody on here. Okay. All right. So yeah, like I was saying, this is something that we're going to be covering a lot over and over and over. So you need to make sure that you're understanding converting decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals. So just to make sure, whenever you're going from a percent, like 37% to a decimal, you start here and then you move to the left twice. So even if you have a single digit like 4%. So even if you have a single digit like that, you start off here and then you move over to the left twice. And then in this empty space right here, you're going to add a 0. So the decimal to 4% is going to be 0.04. And then if I say, okay, well, 4%, what's the fraction to that? Then very simple. Anytime that you have a percent, the whole is going to be 100. So it's 4 over 100. That's it. So remember, and then if I give you just a fraction like this, and you don't know anything about these over here, 4 over 100, that's one of the shortcuts. So 4 over 100 means pennies, right? 100 pennies in a dollar. So if you have 4 cents, it's 4%. So 4%. And then if I say, well, give me the decimal, then you start here and you go to the left 2 times, and then you just add a 0. And then that would be your decimal. So your decimal would be 0.04. So it's pretty easy stuff. I mean, it's stuff that we've covered in class. I don't want to give you guys anything that's too difficult, but I did decide to cover percents again because this is something that you definitely are going to be using a lot in 7th and 8th grade. So you definitely need to know what you're doing as far as percents go and decimals and converting from fractions to decimals and all that. So this is something that we're going to be covering over the next few weeks. So make sure that these 2 assignments that I'm going to upload in a little bit, it's going to be assignments 21 and 22. Make sure that you complete these. I'm going to put the due date as Friday. And then tomorrow, we're going to have a Zoom session at 4 p.m. tomorrow. So at 4 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday. So Thursday, tomorrow. So, and on that Zoom session, we're going to cover some of the same things. But the reason I'm doing it tomorrow is so that this week you guys have an extra day to do assignment 23 also. So assignment 21 and 22 are going to be due on Friday because that gives you 2 days. And then the Zoom session tomorrow that covers assignment 23. Assignment 23 is going to be due by Sunday midnight. But just because it's due Sunday midnight doesn't mean that you should try to complete it Sunday at 11 p.m. Because if you run out of time or you have some kind of glitch or something like that, you're not going to get full credit. And I have been seeing a lot of people that they're turning in late assignments, and it does alert me and it shows it as late. Same thing, I've seen some students that you try to turn in something on Google Classroom, but there's nothing there, it's just blank, you're not going to get credit for something like that if it's blank. So just because it says turned in doesn't mean that you're going to get 100 on it. So when it says turned in and I see that there's blank, that's a 0. So you need to make sure that you're turning these things in on time. So that's it, guys. I'm going to upload these assignments here in a few minutes. And then for assignment 23, we'll cover that on Zoom session tomorrow. All right. If you have any questions, just send me a message through Google Classroom. Thank you. Bye.